You know, they say life is a beautiful thing, okay? They say it heals, they say it uplifts, it gives meaning to life, okay? But what they don't tell you is that love can also change and also destroy you when it is not real. But what they don't tell you is that one, okay? That love is not, it can actually destroy you when it is not real. It can turn into a weapon, it can turn into a storm. It can turn into a fire that burns everything you built from the inside. Now, this is not just a story, right? About a woman who left me when I was broke. It's a story about betrayal. It's a story about survival. It is a story and a painful but very powerful transformation that came from the heartbreak. I never thought I would be the kind of a man to be broken by love. I always believed I was very strong. I always believed I was focused and also prepared for anything. But nothing prepared me for the moment the woman I loved most walked away. Okay? I needed her the most, but then she decided to walk away. Today, I want to tell you the full story. From the first day I met her, to the last day I saw her, from the dreams we shared, to the silence she left behind, and how that pain shaped me into the man I am today. So I want you to sit back, okay? Listen closely, grab a cup of coffee, and maybe, just maybe, you will see yourself somewhere in this story. Because love does not always end with a kiss. Sometimes it ends with a scar. Now, I still remember the day I first saw her, not because the sun was shining brighter that afternoon, but because something inside me paused, It was a friend's graduation party. Nothing fancy. Just a few plastic chairs, loud music, and also the smell of roasted meat in the air. But there she was, standing near the gate in a yellow dress that danced with the wind. Her smile was not forced, her laughter was real, and when our eyes met, something clicked. I didn't know her name yet, but something told me I would. So I walked up to her with shaking hands, pretending to be confident. We started talking about the music, then about the school, and then somehow about life. I was surprised at how easy she was to talk to. Most girls I had met before were guarded, too busy, checking their phones, too careful with their words. But this one, she listened. She laughed at my lame jokes. She asked about my dreams. And I, for the first time in a long time, felt seen. Not just looked at, but seen. Now, over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I saved her number the same night and texted her in the next morning. She replied with a good morning. And I felt, lucky. I smiled like a fool. We started chatting every day, sharing music stories, struggles. She told me about her family, her favorite Bible verse, and the pain of losing her father at a young age. I opened up about my own fears also. How I was trying to, finish school, start something meaningful. Didn't have much, but our connection was very rich. Soon we started meeting more often. Not in hotels or fancy places, just simple spots like roadside tea, stores, under tree shades in the park, or walking along dusty village path. We would buy chapati and soda, sit on stones, and also talk for hours about everything and nothing. And that's the beauty of young love. It doesn't need expensive things, for it to feel expensive. I had no car, I had no apartment, I had no job, just hope and her hand in mine, and that felt like enough. Looking back, maybe I was naive, maybe I was too quick to trust. But when she looked at me and said, "I don't care if you have money, I believe in you," I believed her. And when she leaned on my shoulder and said, "We will build our life together," I thought I had found the one. The truth is, I didn't just fall in love with her, I started building my entire future around her. And that's where the pain would begin. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, okay? Our bond grew stronger, not through expensive gifts or, grand gestures, but through shared struggles and whispered dreams. She was not just my girlfriend, She was my closest friend. She was my diary. She was my second heartbeat. We didn't have much, but what we had was pure. People used to say love fades with time, but with her, I felt like we were just getting started. So we would sit on the veranda outside my uncle's small house, watching the sky turn orange and, as the sun set behind the hills. Sometimes we didn't even talk. We would just sit in silence, feeling the wind, holding hands, smiling in the moments. I thought we were the richest people alive. I would often imagine us growing all together in a small house with laughter, kids, and peace. She would cook, I would farm or fix things around the house. Simple life, happy life. But love is not only about moments of joy. I want you to know that. Love is tested in the very day. And every day it is tested. And ours was tested early. I remember the time I fell sick and couldn't afford treatment. She came to check on me every day, brought me porridge, sat by my bedside, wiped for my head, my forehead, and prayed for me. She stayed when she whispered, "You will be fine. I'm here." I believed I could face anything in the world. I tried to give her my best. Even when I had little, I remember skipping meals so I could actually save just money to buy her a small birthday gift. A second-hand necklace I found in a street supermarket. I wrapped it in a piece of newspaper and also gave it her with shaking hands. She smiled, hugged me, and said it was the most beautiful thing anyone had, ever given her. So that day I thought, if this woman loves me like this now, imagine how much she would love me when I can give her everything she wants. So we talked about our future often, the kind of house we wanted, how many kids we would have, even what we would name them. She always said she wanted a daughter, named Hope. And I also told her I wanted a son named Victor because our story would be one of the victory. And we laughed, we dreamed, we held each other like nothing could go wrong, like we were invisible, but deep inside, I sometimes feared that life might change us, or maybe worse, change her. And yet I silenced those thoughts because when she looked at me, I saw loyalty. I saw someone who didn't even need riches. But to be happy, I trusted her completely. And that trust became the foundation of everything I was building, not just emotionally, but mentally. Every sacrifice I made, every night I worked, every opportunity I chased, I did it with her in mind because in my heart, she wasn't just part of the plan. She was the plan. But what I didn't know then is that plans change, and sometimes love that looks unshakable can fall apart in silence. So it started slowly, like a dark cloud creeping, across the sunny sky. At first, I didn't notice the change. I was too busy, chasing opportunities, trying to make ends meet, pushing every limit to make something out of myself. So my dream was simple: to rise so I could actually take her with me. I wanted to be the man she believed I could be. But the world doesn't always reward effort immediately. Sometimes it breaks you fast to see how much you really want it. Okay? So the small jobs I had started to dry up. The little money I used to get from helping neighbors with computer work or odd tasks stopped coming in. One client didn't pay, another vanished with my borrowed tools. So days turned into weeks and I found myself struggling to even afford transport to town. There were days I ate one meal, sometimes none, but through all that I kept, texting her. I kept smiling through the phone. I didn't want her to worry. I didn't want her to know just how bad things had become. So, but she noticed, she always did. At first, she was supportive. She told me, it's just a phase, babe. We'll get through this. And I believed her. Her words were like medicine. Even when I was empty, she gave me hope. But soon, her tone started to change. She became short with her replies, She stopped picking up my calls. When I asked to meet, she always said she was busy. I told myself she was just overwhelmed. Maybe school was stressing her. I gave her space, but that space became a wall. I still remember that I waited for her for 4 hours. 4 hours at the park, sitting on a stone bench with a bottle of soda. I actually bought that bottle of soda with the last coins I had in my pockets. I had borrowed airtime to remind her about our meeting. She had promised to come, but she never showed up. No call, no apology. I went home that evening, walking through the dust, feeling more empty than ever before. And trust me, that night, I cried for the first time in many years. Not because I thought I would... I don't know. Sometimes this story gets me emotional. I cried not because I was broke. I had survived poverty before. But because I was losing the person I thought would stay, So I began to see the signs more clearly. After that, she no longer asked how I was. She no longer, cared if I ate or slept. One day I called and another man answered. The man answered. He laughed and said, "She's busy." My heart sank. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat the next day. And when I finally gathered the courage to confront her, she didn't deny it. She just said, "I cannot continue like this. You're not moving forward. I need someone who can support me. I'm tired of struggling." That's what she told me. So the moment broke me. I stared at her message on my small phone. For near an hour, the same girl who once said she would love me through anything had turned her back when I had nothing. No fight, no patience, just silence. That's when I realized she didn't love me, she loved what I could offer. And now that I had nothing, I was nothing to her. So that's how I lost her, not through death, not through distance, but through difficulty. And that kind of loss is the hardest to heal from, I'm telling you. So it was very early in the evening, and the sky had started to turn grey, as if it was preparing to cry, for me. I sat under the mango tree behind my uncle's house, holding my cracked phone, staring at her last message over and over again. The message was like, I cannot continue like this. I need someone who can support me. Just one sentence, short and sharp like a razor blade, slicing through everything I thought was true. Now my fingers trembled as I typed back, but then I deleted what I had written. I didn't want to sound angry. I didn't want to beg. I didn't want to ask her why. Even though my heart was screaming for answers, I simply replied, I understand. That's what I replied. I said, I understand. And with that, I turned off my phone and sat there in silence. The birds continued, singing. The wind moved gently through the branches. Life outside me continued like nothing had happened. But inside I was blinking slowly and quietly. I had no one to talk to. I didn't want to be laughed at by my friends because they would just say, we told you women want money. I didn't want my aunt to see my swollen eyes. So I hid behind silence. I walked around during the day pretending to be fine, but at night, I cried into my pillow like a child. I stopped eating properly. I couldn't sleep, My chest felt heavy, like I was carrying invisible bricks of pain. And the worst part, she was moving on, while I was stuck in the memory of what we used to be. So I began replaying everything. Every word, every kiss, every promise. I remembered how she once said, I will never leave you, even if the world turns against you. How did we go from that to this? I blamed myself. Maybe I didn't try hard enough. Maybe I was not a man enough. Maybe I had gotten a job faster. Maybe if I had taken her out more. Maybe if I had looked richer, she would have stayed. These maybes haunted me like ghosts in my sleep. Now one night, I saw her photo online with another man. They were dressed up, smiling, sitting in a restaurant I couldn't even afford even on my best days. My heart shattered all over again. That was the final blow. I'm telling you, I realized she was not waiting. She was actually grieving like I was. She had already repressed me. I wanted to scream, yes, to break something, to disappear, but I didn't. I sat on the floor of my tiny room, hugging my knees and whispered into myself, you have to survive this. You see, heartbreak does not always come loudly. I want to tell you this. Sometimes it comes quietly. Okay? Through a message, a changed tone, or maybe a cold silence. And when it happens, you don't just lose a person, you lose a part of yourself. You lose the version of you that believed in you forever. And for a while, you walk around feeling like a ghost in your own body. So I stopped talking to people. I stopped creating. I stopped dreaming. Days blended into nights and nights into numb mornings. I was alive, but I was not living. I was just existing. But one thing about hitting rock bottom is that there is nowhere else to go but up. And while she had moved on, smiling in new photos and also laughing in new arms, I was slowly and slowly gathering the broken pieces of my heart, trying to remember who I was before she came. Because I knew that if I didn't fight for myself, no one else would fight for me, okay? So after the breakup, life became a fog, not darkness, because darkness at least feels complete. But this was worse. It was a foggy emptiness, like walking through life wearing wet clothes and carrying a heart too heavy for your chest. That's how I was. I stopped checking my phone. The very sound of a notification gave me anxiety. My playlists became silent. I couldn't listen to love songs anymore because they felt like knives, each lyric reminding me of what I had lost. So the world didn't stop for my heartbreak. No, people laughed. People moved on with their lives, I'm telling you. People made jokes. People got into new relationships. But I was still stuck in yesterday. Stuck in her last message. Stuck in my failure to become the man she wanted. I wanted to tell someone how I was feeling, But every time I opened my mouth, the words refused to come out. How do you explain to someone that you're grieving someone who is still alive? I mean that you're mourning a love that never even got the chance to grow to its full potential. So I started sleeping all day just to avoid the reality, I didn't want to see couples walking hand in hand. I didn't want to see the world reminding me of what I had lost. My body was alive, yes, but my spirit was in hiding. I smiled in public, But it was fake, I'm telling you. The kind of smile you wear like a mask to avoid the conversation you don't have the strength to have. I would lie and say I was okay, but inside I was drowning in my own thoughts, I'm telling you. So there is something dangerous about silence. I want to tell you this, especially the kind that is forced upon you by heartbreak. You begin to overthink, and every second becomes a moment of reflection. You remember the little things, her laugh, the way she would say your name, how she looked at you like you were the only man in the world. And now, that look was being given to someone else. That laugh was now someone else's reward, and that broke me deeper than I can ever explain here. So let me tell you what happened. One night, I almost gave up. I sat on the floor, holding an old photo of us and cried like a child. I asked God why He allowed me to love someone who would just walk away with then. I had nothing. I asked myself if I would ever be enough, okay? That's when I realized that depression is not always about sadness. Sometimes it's about emptiness, I'm telling you. About being numb to everything, about feeling like nothing matters anymore. I was not eating, I was not taking, I was not even praying. I remember people asking me, what happened to you? And you used to be so full of life. What happened? And I would just nod and say, life is hard. But they didn't know that truth. Okay, they didn't know that I had lost someone who made me believe in tomorrow. And when she left, tomorrow stopped making sense. Now, but the thing is, rock bottom has a strange gift and hidden inside its pain. I'm telling you this. It's the point where you realize no one is coming to save you. You're either going to stay there and rot in silence, or you're going to stand up with shaking hands and tear-filled eyes and start the crying back to yourself. So I began to change, slowly pain-free, and without any applause. I started journaling. I started taking to myself in the mirror, reminding myself that I still mattered, even she didn't see it. I started reading books. I started listening to motivational talks, watching stories of people who had been broken but refused to remain shattered. And that's when I understood she may have broken me, yes, but I still had the power to rebuild. Not because she asked for it, not to prove anything to her, but because I owed it to myself. Because the person I was before her, I still deserved to live again. Okay? So, rebuilding yourself, let me tell you this, guys, before I even continue the story. Rebuilding yourself after a breakup is not like flipping a switch. Where you switch on, off, no. It is more like sketching a wound that keeps reopening every time you remember the past. But I knew if I didn't start, I would never heal, So I stopped trying to forget her and instead started trying to remember myself, the version of me that existed before I gave my heart away, the boy who had dreams, the man who still had purpose even in pain. At first, the healing felt forced, I would tell myself, you're okay, even when I wasn't. But those affirmations, repeated over time, started forming cracks in the walls of pain. Okay? I started waking up earlier, not because I was motivated, but because I refused to waste another day drowning in sadness. I began to exercise. I began to read, to work harder, not because I wanted her to see me doing well, but because I needed to prove to myself that my story was not over just because she left. I surrounded myself with people who reminded me of who I was. Friends who didn't ask me to move on quickly, but who sat with me in my sadness and reminded me that healing takes time. I started writing again, powering my emotions onto paper, turning pain into poetry. Each word became a step towards freedom, and each sentence reminded me that even broken voices can still sing songs of strength, I'm telling you. So one night I stood in the mirror and looked at myself, really looked. The man staring back was tired, yes, but he was still standing. He still had dreams in his eyes. He still had a fire, however small. And I whispered to him, you're going to be okay. She left, but you're still here. That was the first night I didn't cry myself to sleep. That was the first night I believed I could live without her. As I healed, I started to see the truth more daily and very clearly. I had loved her more than I loved myself. I had sacrificed my dreams. I had lowered my standards and ignored red flags, all in the name of love, But real love does not require you to lose yourself. Real love adds to who you are. It doesn't erase you. I must tell you this. And the funny thing is, as I grew stronger, I stopped checking her profile. I stopped wondering who she was with. I stopped replaying the good memories and started seeing the full picture. Even the parts I once ignored, I realized that maybe she was not the villain and I wasn't the victim. Maybe we were just two people whose paths were not meant to continue together. But more importantly, I realized that I could love again, not someone else yet, but myself, and that was the most powerful love of all. So I started dreaming again. I started, planning my future again. I began to feel joy in the little things. A walk in the evening, a call from a friend, a good meal, a peaceful moment. I was no longer surviving. I was healing, slowly, silently, but surely. And even though I was not fully okay yet, I was better than the man who sat in silence, holding on to the heartbreak. I was becoming whole again, piece by piece. So it had been months. I had finally stopped expecting her name to pop up on my screen. I had actually deleted our chats, archived our photos, and also buried every moment in a place where I thought it could no longer, hurt me. Life was not perfect, yes, but I had found some kind of rhythm again. Until one evening, when the past knocked on my door quietly and unexpectedly. I remember that moment like it was yesterday. It was a Sunday. I had just come back from a long walk, tired but peaceful. I sat on my bed scrolling through messages, and then there it was. Her name that once, brought joy, then pain, and now confusion. A simple, "Hey, I've been thinking about you." Just 7 words. That's the message she sent me. Those 7 words, they shook something in me. My heart skipped a beat, my breath froze, and for a moment I didn't know whether to smile or feel sick. I stared at that message for minutes. My mind raced. Why now? What does she want? I mean, is she okay? Has something happened? Or had she finally realized that she walked away from? I didn't respond immediately. I couldn't. I needed time, okay? Not just to figure out what to say, but to make sure I didn't let old wounds reopen just because someone who caused them decided to return. Okay, so but curiosity is a powerful thing, I must say. The next day I replied, "Hey, it's been a while. I hope you're doing okay." And just like that, we started talking again. Not like lovers, okay? Not like strangers, but like two people, cautiously standing on broken glasses, trying to see if it is safe to take another step. She told me she had been watching from afar, that she would see my growth, my small wins, my journey of healing. She admitted she thought, I would fall apart without her, but instead I rose, that shook her. She said the silence taught her more than the friendship and the relationship ever could. But in my absence, she met people who pretended to love her, only to leave her emptier than before. She told me a couple of things. She told me she missed me, not just the love, but the way I made her feel safe, seen, valued, and then came to a part I never expected. She said I made a mistake. I thought walking away would lead me to something better, but all it led me to was back to you. So those words hit hard. For months I had imagined her saying them, replayed the scenes in my mind where she came running back full of regret. But now it was happening. I was not sure about how to feel. Part of me still loved her, or maybe loved the idea of her. Another part had scars so deep that even her return could not erase them. Could I really trust her again? Could I risk reopening the same door that once shattered me? We talked for hours that night. She apologized genuinely. She cried. She admitted things she never did before. She said she left because she didn't believe in herself to walk with me during my darkest days. That my poverty reminded her of her fears. That now she realizes love is tested not in comfort but also in hardship. And she failed to test. I won't lie, okay? My heart softened, but it also trembled. I had worked too hard to become whole again. And even though I no longer, I longed for love, I was not desperate for the same kind of love that once broke me. That night, I didn't give her an answer. I told her I needed time, not to punish her, but to protect myself. Because healing teaches you one thing. Some people come back not because they have changed, but because they see you have, So that message was a storm. It brought back every memory, every moment, both good and bad. It reopened wounds, but it also reminded me of one thing, my strength. Because the first time I was not the broken one begging for love, I was the healed one deciding if was still worth it. So, after that night, my mind became a war zone. One part of me was whispering, give her a second chance. People change. Another part was screaming, don't be a fool. Remember how much it hurts. So I found myself walking aimlessly for hours the next day, trying to make sense of what was happening. You see, when someone walks out during your hardest moments, it breaks something deeper than just the heart. It breaks trust, and trust once broken does not come back the same, But here she was asking for the trust again, saying all the right words, sounding sincere. Maybe she was, but how do you measure sincerity when your heart is still holding all the pain? So I thought about everything, not just how she left me, but how I survived without her, how I picked up the pieces of my life, learned to smile again, to love myself. I remembered the nights I cried in silence, not because I missed her, but because I hated how easily she gave up on me. Okay? I remembered the friends who stayed when she left, the people who believed in me when I had nothing, the little milestones I celebrated alone. And I realized something very important. Her absence had become part of my strength. Forgiveness is powerful, yes, but forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation. Sometimes you forgive someone to set yourself free, not to welcome them back. But still there was a part of me that missed her, that still wished we had made it, that wanted to believe maybe it was time would, maybe. So that evening, I did something I had not done in a long time. I sat down, wrote 2 lists. One with all the reasons I should take her back, and another one with all the reasons I should walk away. So the first list was full of emotions, it was full of memories, it was full of laughter, it was full of good moments, But the second list, it was reality. It had the sleepless nights, it had the loneliness, it also had the unanswered messages. The day she stopped calling, the way she gave up just because I was broke. And you know what? The second list was longer, much longer, and it spoke to the loudest. But the heart is not always logical, it wants what it feels familiar. So even if familiar once made pain, So I did the only thing I knew it would help. Now I prayed, not just for clarity, but for courage, courage to make the decision my future self would be proud of. So that night I texted her. I remember the message I sent. I said, I'm proud of the woman you're becoming. I truly am, and I'll always wish you well, but I've come too far on this healing journey to turn back now. I forgive you, not because I want to rekindle the past, but because I need peace to fully embrace my future. We were a beautiful chapter, but not the whole book. I won't lie, I was hurt, Letting go of someone you once imagined forever with is never easy, But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the love that broke you. So the next morning she replied with a broken heart emoji. But I respect you. So this is what she said. I understand. I will always regret letting you go, but I will respect your choice. And just like that, it ended for good this time. But you know what? That night I slept with peace. A kind of peace I had not felt in months. Not because I want something, no, but because I didn't lose myself. Let me tell you about something. Let me tell you about healing. Healing, it is such a simple word, but it holds the weight of 1,000 silent battles, I'm telling you. After I sent her that final message to her, I thought healing would be instant. I expected relief, freedom, a sense of victory, but truthfully, healing came in waves. Some days I was okay, other days I felt like I was right back at the beginning, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made the right choice. Healing does not move in a straight line. I want to tell you that. It loops, it stings, it teaches. There were moments when I missed her, not because I wanted her back, but because I missed who I was when I believed in us, There were mornings I would wake up and forget she was no longer in my life. My hand would almost reach for the phone to text her good morning, only to remember we are done. And in those moments, the sadness didn't just come from losing her. It came from realizing how much for myself I had invested into something that was not even meant to last. But with time, the pain softened. One day I laughed, really laughed, at a silly meme a friend sent me, and I paused because that was the first time in a month that my laughter wasn't forced. It was real, it was pure, light, and I realized healing had begun. It didn't happen in big moments. Healing came in little things. The way I started enjoying sunsets again, the way music began to sound sweet again, the way I looked at the mirror and no longer saw a man who was abandoned, but a man who had survived. I started doing things I loved, reading books, taking long walks without my phone, spending time with friends who never gave up on me. And slowly, I rebuilt the relationship I had neglected the most, the one with myself. I forgave myself for not seeing the red flags. I forgive myself, for staying too long. I forgive myself for hoping too much. And when I did that, I found peace. One powerful lesson I learned in this phase was you are allowed to outgrow people who didn't grow with you. We don't heal by going back to what blocked us, no. We heal by choosing differently, by walking in a new direction, even if it's lonely at first. You see, healing is not about becoming who you were before the heartbreak. No, it's about becoming someone wiser, someone stronger, and more self-aware. Someone who knows that love is beautiful, but it should never cost you worth, your peace, or your purpose. I started falling in love again, not with another person, but with my journey, with the man I was becoming, with a strength I never knew I had. And for the first time in a long time, I stopped asking, why did she leave? Instead, I started saying, thank God she did. Because if she didn't, or maybe if she hadn't, I wouldn't have discovered the strength hiding inside me. I wouldn't have learned that brokenness can, be the beginning of something beautiful. I want you to know that. I want you to know that. I want to know that. So, let me tell you, and you know what happens after heartbreak? People say you will love again, but they never tell you how hard that first connection feels after being shattered. How terrifying it is to feel anything for someone new. When I first met her, the new girl, I didn't even know it was happening. She was not trying to win my heart, She didn't say the perfect words. She was just kind, genuine, and present. She asked how I was, and actually I listened to the answer. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't rush my healing. She just stood there quietly and consistently. But I was afraid. I afraid to open up, afraid to be vulnerable again. I had been here before. The butterflies, the spark, the excitement, and all of it had ended in a heartbreak. So when she smiled at me the way I smiled back, but with caution. So when she said she liked being around me, I said me too, but part of me wanted to run. I didn't want to fall again. Falling hurts, and yet something about her made me stay. She never forced me to be ready. She never demanded more than I could give. She simply showed up day after day in the smallest ways that mattered most, and she reminded me that not everyone comes to you, hurt you. That sometimes love returns not to replace what you lost, but show you that you can feel again. So one day she asked me, why did you look at me like you're scared? And I told her the truth. Because I've loved before and lost myself. I gave everything and ended up with nothing. She didn't flinch. She didn't walk away. She said, then don't give me everything. Just give me what is real. That moment changed everything. You see, after heartbreak, we build walls. We think they protect us, but those walls also keep out the very people who want to love us differently. Healing is not just about moving on. No, it's about learning to trust again. And trust does not happen overnight. It starts with one good conversation, one sincere apology, not from someone else, but from you to yourself. It builds with small moments like, letting someone hold your hand and not pulling away, like telling someone your fears and realizing they are not scared of your wounds. Loving after loss is one of the bravest things anyone can do. It's risky, it's messy, but it's also one of the most beautiful reminders that life goes on, and so does your heart. So she never replaced the pain. She didn't come to erase the pain, but she came to remind me that even broken hearts still beat. And slowly I began to let go of the, what ifs, and what if I get hurt again? What if she leaves too? What if I'm not enough? And I started asking, what if this time I'm loved right? Because sometimes after the storm, the sun really does rise. Not loudly, not dramatically, but gently, through warm eyes, soft words, and also a soul that feels like home. So I didn't jump. I didn't rush. I walked slowly, but I walked. And in doing so, I realized I was no longer surviving love. I was learning to love it again. Okay. It always happens when you least expect when you least expect it. Just when you're finally starting to breathe again, just when the nights are getting easier and the memories are fading, they come back. A simple hey, just checking on you, I miss you. And for a moment, your whole world shakes, Not because no matter how strong you've become, there is still a piece of your heart that remembers how deeply you once loved them. Okay, you remember their laughter, remember their touch, how they once made you feel like the only person in the world. And that's what makes it so hard. Because you also remember the tears, the nights you begged for answers, the way they walked away when you had nothing, the silence when they needed the most. And now, here they are, returning like nothing ever happened, talking like time didn't pass, like your healing was not a hard earned. But this time something is different. You've changed, You've no longer you're no longer the broken version of yourself that begged for love. You've learned to stand alone. You fought through the storm. You rebuilt yourself piece by painful piece. So when they say I miss you, you don't rush to reply. You sit with your feelings, you talk to the wiser version of yourself, the one who cried herself to sleep, and promised never to go through that again. Do you ask questions yourself, hard questions like, do I miss them or do I miss the idea of them? Do I want them back or do I just want to feel wanted again? Because here is the truth. Sometimes people don't come back because they love you. They come back because they see you've moved on, because your peace looks beautiful without them, because they realize what they lost, not who they lost, but what, And you have to remember that what it cost you to become this version of yourself. You have to protect what growth, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. It's okay to still love someone and not let them back in. It is okay to miss them and still choose yourself, because healing does not mean forgetting. No, it means honoring your worth even when your heart is tempted. You can forgive someone and still say no more. You can remember the good times and still know you deserve better. And if they truly cared, they wouldn't have had to lose you to realize your value. You don't owe anyone access to you just because they had it once. You're not the same person who cried for their return. You're wiser, you're stronger, you're softer. Not for them, but for yourself. So when they come back with sweet words and sad eyes, you don't respond with bitterness. You respond with boundaries. You say, I've healed and I'm not going back to the place that broke me. You say, thank you for the lesson, but I've learned it now. You say, I deserve the kind of love that never makes me question my worth. Because protecting your peace is not selfish. It is sacred. And choosing yourself even when it hurts, that is the most powerful kind of love. There it is. Okay? I want to tell you this before I finish. Heartbreak is one of those teachers that doesn't knock politely at your door. It crashes in uninvited. It flips your life upside down, and in the chaos, in the nights of crying, the silence, the loneliness, you learn things you've never thought you would need to know. I used to think love was enough. That if you loved someone deeply with all your heart, it would be enough to make them stay. But life showed me otherwise. Lesson 1, love is not always enough. Love needs respect, it needs effort, it needs consistency. Because someone can love you in their own way and still hurt you every day. They can say they love you and still choose to live when things get tough. That was one of the hardest lessons to learn. That love without action, love without sacrifice is just a pretty word, not a safe place. Lesson 2, people show you who they are when things fall apart. When I had nothing, when life got dark, that's when I saw her true colors. It is very easy to stay when everything is beautiful. But who stands with you in the storm? That is who truly matters. It is the silence that you hear the loudest answers. And the lesson 3 I learned was, you cannot make someone see your worth, okay? You can give them everything, your heart, your loyalty, your dreams, but if they are blind to your value, they will treat you like you're disposable. And the longer you stay hoping they will change, the more they teach you that your love comes without limits, even when it hurts you. But I also learned something powerful. Pain has a purpose. Heartbreak that almost destroyed me, it also rebuilt me. It taught me boundaries. It taught me that I deserve a love that doesn't live when I'm empty, that I shouldn't have to beg to be heard, seen, or understood. The nights I cried alone became sacred. They forced me to look within, to heal the parts of me that were settling for less than I deserved. And I found strength I didn't know I had. I found peace in being alone, not because I gave up on love, but because I refused to accept love that broke me. And another lesson I learned was, your worth is not measured by who stays or leaves. No. You are enough. Even when someone walks away, you're valuable. Even when someone fails to see it, your journey does not end with their departure, okay? Sometimes that's where it truly begins. And now I see everything more clearly. I don't regret loving her, not at all. She was a chapter in my life, and in her leaving, I found the courage to write my story again and again. I stopped chasing closure and started creating peace. I stopped needing answers and started trusting the silence, because healing is not just about getting over them, it's about coming back home to yourself. So if you're listening right now, or if you're watching me, if your heart is broken, and you're wondering if you will ever smile again, let me tell you something. You will smile, okay? You will smile, you will laugh again, you will laugh again, but this time wiser. You will walk away from what doesn't serve you, and you will walk towards the version of you that is being waiting to rise. And when they come back, because sometimes they do, you will look at them in calm eyes and say, thank you for leaving, because I'm losing you. I found myself. So please, if this story touched your heart, if you saw yourself in these words, please don't leave without subscribing to this channel. There is someone out there who needs to hear this. Maybe a friend, maybe a sister or a brother, or maybe even someone you've never met. I want you to share this video, spread healing, spread hope. And don't forget to like and comment below. Tell me, have you ever loved someone who left? Only to want you back when life gets better. I read every single comment. This channel is a family and your voice matters here. Let's heal together. Let's grow together. I want you to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I will see you in the next story. Until then, keep choosing yourself. My name is Dedan. Thank you for watching me.